Hey guys, so this is the Reading Strategy Action Plan video, and this is for Gracia, I think is how you say her name. So as I was listening to her read, I noticed that some of her strengths included that she was extremely focused throughout the whole time that she was reading, and she was very persistent. Even when she didn't really understand a word or didn't know what the word said, she still tried, which is really good for a struggling reader, and it's a good sign to show that they're going to keep working. She would go back and reread if she made mistakes, so she was kind of catching where some of those mistakes were happening. And really, for an ELL reader, her fluency was pretty solid. She was stopping at punctuation. It wasn't too fast or too slow or anything crazy like that. So I was really impressed with her fluency for being a struggling ELL reader. Some of the weaknesses that I noticed was that she wasn't always attending to the text. Sometimes she added extra words, and vowels really seemed to pose a problem for her, especially like if the vowels were in the middle or it was a vowel team, so AI, or if it was like vowel consonant E and that E makes that middle vowel say its name. Those kind of situations really posed a problem for her, which was kind of interesting because that does change how a lot of the text looks. And then she was just kind of hesitant, which again makes sense. She's a struggling reader, she's being recorded, but just kind of maybe if we were to start working with her, start with confidence. But I'm doing an after reading strategy, and from page 161, I think, in chapter 6 of the Gibbons text, they talked a lot about a lot of different strategies, but the one that I think would work particularly well for Gracia is called close. And what it does is it deletes certain words from the text and then makes the student fill them in. So it really makes the reader focus on language, and it really lets the learner start to think about the strategies of a good fluent reader. And I think that that's something that Gracia would benefit from. So I'm going to show you how I would teach this to Gracia and then kind of talk you through it after I'm done. So for this specific example, I chose page 3 from the book that she was reading. So this is how I would teach it. So Gracia, you read extremely well. You were very persistent and you tried really hard, and I could hear that you were really working on your fluency. I want us to continue working on fluency by paying attention to some of these vowels in the text, because some of the vowels are kind of tricky. So I'm going to bring us back to page 3, and let's go through, and we're going to read this first. There's going to be some words that aren't in here. There's going to be a blank, but let's just go through and read it. So, one day, Lizard slowly climbed up on a large rock. He blank most of the blank day in the blank sun. Under the blank, Prairie Dog blank making a tunnel. By blank time, he was blank and tired. As Prairie Dog blank up through the ground, he blank his head on Lizard's rock. Blank, he cried, popping blank of the ground. Who blank this blank here? Not me, blank Lizard, as he laid blank once again on top of his rock. Maybe you should blank where you're going. So now, Gracia, our job is to fill in these blanks. So on the side, I have a word bank of all the words that's going to fit into the text. So let's go through and think about this. As I was reading, was there anything that you thought of should definitely go in here? So that's kind of how I would introduce this strategy to Gracia. Obviously, I don't have a student here to work with, but the book gave the option of using a word bank or not using a word bank based off of how far along the reader was, how much the reader was struggling, and anything like that. So I think for Gracia, because she is so young and she was kind of struggling with some of those vowel words, having the word bank wouldn't be a bad idea. And you can do this in a one-on-one intervention lesson. This could be done in a small group intervention, or it could be a whole class. You can kind of pick and choose what your students need. But if you're going to do one-on-one, I would start by having them read through it on their own. Obviously, I read it aloud so that you can kind of see what I was talking about. But having them read through it on their own is going to kind of get some of those words in their head. And I noticed as I was reading, I did plug in a word here or there where there was a blank, so whoops. But by them having that awareness, they're going to have to look at the words in the word bank and think about what sounds do I hear in the word, or what makes sense. So not only is it building that fluency of the pacing of the reading, it's also helping with comprehension. One of the things that the book said with the strategy is not to leave out vocabulary words if you're working on fluency, because if you leave out words like lizard or prairie dog or tunnel, something like that, that might be a new concept, that whole vocab session, if you've worked on that before, kind of goes by the wayside. And so you have to pick a strategy, whether you're working on just vocab or just fluency. And so I think for Gracia's purposes, fluency is kind of what we would want to work on together. So this strategy is called close, and it's just omitting certain words throughout the text to make the reader more aware of the structure of the text and then like what the word sounds like. So